comedy, pop culture, and everything in between. By idiots, for idiots. Welcome, sinners. This is Sports Idiot Nation.
Welcome in, sinners. We're going to do a lot of sinning today because today is October 3rd already, episode 19. Holy cow, boys. I can't believe this has happened so quick. We're almost at 20 episodes. How are we feeling?
I can't believe it's already October, and I can't believe it's not butter.
I knew.
Right.
I was going to say that if you didn't, but yeah, I was just going to say.
Beat you to it.
I mean, here we are, 20 episodes almost in, and I haven't killed Adam yet. So hey, I think we make a good team, you guys. We make a good team.
Thank God Adam's in a different city. If he was in the same city as you, it might be a different story.
It's just been a rough couple of weeks, you know.
I will pull this podcast over, so help me.
Might have to take it out
jump
on him,
through the screen. So, the funny thing is, we forget sometimes that we have this podcast. We talk about, offline, we talk about some of our stories growing up and how we grew to love sports, or just hilarious stories that we have, crazy stories. And it's like, wait a minute, we have a podcast. We need to talk about this. And it's well documented that I've known Miles for a while. I know some of his, but T.I., I wanted to ask you, what are some of your stories that you remember where either playing sports or watching them? What's your first memory where you're like, oh man, this is it for me. This is what I want to be doing. I want to watch sports. I want to, play them and that kind of thing.
And I'll touch on both of them quick. I'd say first, of course, watching sports, because most of us are exposed to sports first on television before, you actually play one. For me, obviously being from the South, well documented, I've said my grandfather was an Auburn graduate. So naturally, I grew up watching Auburn football. And so my first introduction to sports in general, was really college football. And I fell in love with the game of football instantly. I didn't really get into pro football until I was 15, 16 years old, to be honest. And it was all just, to me, college football. Because, I was born and raised in Nashville, lived here my whole life. There's no pro sports here, We had, obviously, the Memphis Grizzlies, at some point, which I adopted immediately, Same thing, obviously, with the Preds. But, as a kid, you had the Nashville Sounds. And then I had Auburn football in my house on Saturdays. So that was my first where I knew, okay, yeah, sports are for me. And then, of course, there it blossomed into basketball through the Bulls. Being alive in the 90s, how could you not be captivated by the Chicago Bulls? And even the Lakers and the Pistons to some degree, because, I was still, 10, 11 years old at that time, So, but for playing sports, I played all sports as a kid, growing up. Played football once, even in 8th grade, and I helped guide our 8th grade team to a winless season. They had me playing guard for some reason. I don't know why. It just made no sense. And I know I was personally responsible for some losses because, I heard it after the games. But I knew that type of football was not for me. But football, or a little footy, as they say, that was my first introduction to sports, where I realized, okay, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Picked this up pretty quick, and I played most of my life from age 5, 6. Coached a few teams, a couple kids teams, obviously, like you guys with basketball, and then these years I've been coaching my son's team for a long time. But I actually continued. I played on. I was on the club team at MTSU. I was the only freshman to make the team that tried out. That was a pretty awesome experience to me, because what a lot of people don't know is that you just think every school has a soccer team or this. But at that time, MTSU, there was, I don't know if it was all colleges or whatever, but they had to have equal amount of sports for male, female, and they just didn't have a real soccer team.
It's still like that across a lot of
that's
a lot of areas.
It's a part of Title IX.
Yeah, well, that's what I assumed. And so there was a Southeastern Alliance something. It was basically a Southeastern Conference type thing for soccer. But we got to play. We played Auburn, played Tennessee, played Samford, Alabama. Lots of cool stuff. And me being an Auburn fan, Auburn came down to MTSU and we played them. I wore an Auburn shirt under my jersey after the game. I went to him. I was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, guys, War Eagle," And
You're like, wait, aren't you? You're not on the team.
Pretty hilarious. I mean, I was 18 years old. You know, it was pretty surreal. So when we had a player coach, JP, I can't remember his last name. He played for the Metros at the time. We had the Nashville Metros. You know, long before we had any kind of Nashville MLS here. Yeah, we had.
Have electricity?
He was a professional, semi-professional soccer player, but he also was the coach of our team, but he also played for us because it was
also
still
the
a club
bartender
team
at the local pub.
Well, it's funny you say that because there was many coolers of beer on the sideline. That was one thing that was crazy to me. I was like, okay, here I am. I'm excited. I'm on the soccer team, and wait a second, most of these guys are getting drunk on the sidelines. Like, what's going on? You know. But that was just what it was. It wasn't sanctioned by the school, so of course they're going to do that, you know. But it was a lot of fun, you know, getting to travel, getting to go up to Knoxville. It's my only time I've ever been on campus at Knoxville and walking up that big long ass hill, like, and that was cool. You know, Tennessee kicked our ass, but you know, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, that was
you were there.
That's probably my thing. It's like I played in the men's league until I was about 25, 26, and then I realized like I don't have insurance. I'm still playing like I'm 18 years old. Yeah, I was a madman. I played defense my entire life. I probably had more red cards for my school than the last like 5 teams after me combined. I was so notorious. I had number 0, which my son wears now. Ironically,
Agent 0.
And I was so notorious. My senior year after I graduated, one of my best friends, Andy. Miles, you met, who was working at the bar where we had the watch party. He adopted my number. And the very first game of the year, the ref came up to him and said, "We're on to you this year, number 0. You better watch your shit." And he was like, "No, it's a totally different number 0. This is not the same guy." So yeah, this is
a nice 0.
Soccer was my thing because I mean I knew what I could get away with. I know how I could push a shove. I know what I could do when they weren't looking. Like I was a very like ruthless defender. But I mean, I made all district my high school multiple times. I was the MVP of the team. You know, I was captain of the team. So I mean, for a reason, obviously. You know, not bragging and boasting, but hey, we all have our glory days, right? That's pretty much mine. Now I'm just a washed up.
I think
soccer coach.
The most shocking part of your story is that you started playing soccer at the age of 6, which, according to my calculations, that means you started playing football in 1984. I didn't think the United States discovered football until like the late 80s, at least. So the fact that there was soccer in the United States in 1984 is mind blowing.
Yeah, we have a great field, HYSA, down here in Nashville, and me and a lot of the parents too. Like I talked to, like they were all like, "Yeah, I remember playing down here." There were like 2 fields, 4 fields. Now there's like 20 fields, but yeah, like I still got pictures of me, you know, my little blue and yellow jersey, you know, like 6 or 7 at least, you know. Got kicked in the head one time, and yeah, that was one of my fondest memories there in HYSA is getting just drilled in the temple and realizing like, okay, soccer is rough.
That's good. Miles, there's a story that I remember vaguely that you can refresh our memories on with when you were born and the standings for the Cincinnati Reds or something.
Yeah. So my parents still have it to this day because a few months ago when my daughter was born, you know, we're going back through all the stuff that I had my parents collected when I was born. So they have these photo albums, pictures, sure, but they also collected the newspaper from August 17th, 1990. Yeah, you know, go ahead, steal my identity. That was the day I was born. So
what's your social?
They have the
could you just hold still for a second? Let me get a photo.
01FU. So they
wait a second.
You know, the finance section, the home section, this, that, and the other, and then, of course, the sports section. And clipped out in there, first place in the NL West at the time, the Cincinnati Reds, who would then a couple months later go on to win their last World Series to date. We could probably view this again in 15 to 20 years, and still, it will be Cincinnati's last championship in any sport. But then that makes me think of the first
1900s.
Good dear, the late 1900s. We feel attacked.
Yeah.
So the first sporting event I remember watching, I alluded to his, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about mine. The first one that I watched where I was like, yeah, the sports thing for me, I remember is Super Bowl 30. So that kind of tells you guys how much younger I am than you.
Steelers in Dallas?
30. is Steelers and Dallas, and seeing
Hey,
Pittsburgh
you gotta give me some
lose.
credit.
Yeah,
Ti, you didn't know that.
Well, when you said that, I was like, "Is this man a machine?"
No,
does he
for
know
real,
that?
because you know what's crazy? I remember sometimes the way that the Roman numerals are set up because I had this poster at home when I was
Triple
young.
X.
Calm
that
down, Rain
had-
Man. Calm down, Rain Man.
No, I know. I almost have a mild form of football autism that I'm like, up, Super Bowl 30, up, Dallas, up. That was Larry Brown had 3 interceptions. Neil O'Donnell was terrible.
All right, so where was the game played then?
Was it Pasadena?
No, wrong. Tempe, Arizona.
Dude, I was gonna say Arizona after that.
It was in the same country.
I had the country right. I had the.
You get a point for that, right?
It was north of the equator. I had that right.
One state over. In any case, so watching the Steelers lose, I was like, this is great stuff. I don't know who the Steelers are, but I hate them. And then also with the Reds in 1990 being their last championship for forever, that was the Cowboys' last championship for forever. So kind of went hand in hand there. I still cheer for the Reds, even though I probably shouldn't. The Cowboys can suck a turd, as we all know. But those were my initial encounters with sports, really as a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
Now, so for me, growing up on the West Coast, everyone can take this as braggy. I simply don't care. I used to think that the Super Bowl was basically could be renamed as the San Francisco international invitational football game.
Cut. I can't be a part of this.
Because when you're 5 or 6 years old and like almost every year the team goes and wins, you're like, oh, so I'd be like, hey, Pop, who's going to play us next year in the Invitational? Like not literally, but a little. When you're a kid, you just don't understand that, hey, that's a big deal, as this dynasty.
As hard as it is, yeah, for sure.
Shout out to the episode with Johnny Dell. Check out his channel. But while we're checking out channels, be sure to check out Sports Idiot Nation on every social media that you could get your hands on. But I will say that episode was cool because we talked about the different dynasties, and growing up in the 80s in the Bay Area, it's hard to explain. If you haven't lived in Chicago during the 90s or during Pittsburgh in the 70s or whatever, if you don't live in Kansas City now, then you don't understand what I'm talking about. You just simply don't. And so that was my, as far as sports, football was a huge thing because the Golden State Warriors were not very good at all. The San Francisco Giants at that time they weren't very good at all either. As later in the 80s with Will Clark and stuff, they did get quite a bit better, and then going to the World Series and losing to Oakland, of course. No
love lost for San Francisco. I'm a Cardinals fan, so you guys can go ahead and suck it.
Yeah,
You gave us enough troubles in the World Series and beyond, so.
Willie McGee, the San Francisco Giant and Arizona or
from the World Series,
St. Louis Cardinal. That was a guy that I thought was equally good on both teams.
Well,
Willie McGee.
To transition from the pro side, like that. That's how I kind of fell in love with pro. Because it's funny that you mentioned as a kid you think this, right? How many kids do you see, as you said, Steph Curry? You see these kids, Steph Curry jerseys everywhere, right? It's all they know. You see kids with Mahomes jerseys. You see kids in Mahomes jerseys all over Nashville. It's all they know. To them, he is a superhero. So as a kid, you just you go that route, right? And so, for instance, long before the Titans came, or Oilers rather, I was like, I think I've said before on the show, I was kind of sagging groceries, and all these guys were wearing their pro jerseys and stuff. And I was like, man, what's this all about? And they're in the break room. They're all just watching pro football and asking me what my team is. And I'm like, I just watch Auburn. I don't know, man. It's SEC.
Yeah, because Nashville, I get it. Yeah, you don't have a...
And so I just, it's kind of I think I told so they were just watching this Packers game, and Brett Favre was just lighting it up. And all of them were just like, oh, this guy, I hate this team. Oh, and I was just kind of sitting back watching I don't know, dude, looks pretty good to me. And so I kind of I just adopted them. Started just for probably 10 years, I guess, or so. I don't know, something like that.
Wow.
Just kind because we didn't really have a team, and like so. And it was funny you say that because my brother, we're years younger. He was growing up in the '90s, and he was a Cowboys fan before, obviously. And so it's like it's just what you see, what you're exposed to, right? When you don't have a concept of how bigger it is.
If
and
your
so
state
that's
that you're in
Titans.
doesn't have a team.
Yeah. And so when the Titans came, I
Oh.
went to the preseason game at Vanderbilt, saw the Redskins. I was like, that's cool, but I ended up, like I said, went to the Music City Miracle game, had the most crazy, insane experience of my life. And from that day on, I was just like, nah, this is what I want. I want the NFL. I want the Titans. Like, I mean, that day was just so surreal. But me and my buddies still talk about it. We're just like, how did that happen? All because I was a bartender at Ruby Tuesday, and Jeff Fisher's secretary was a regular, and me and my roommates all told. She was like, well, y'all have to just say you're my cousins from out of town. I can get you friends and family tickets for $50. So we were sitting with all the coaches' wives, family, 50-yard line. Tickets we paid for $50. All 21 years old, all wasted, shirts off, just acting like fools, cussing at people leaving before it happened. And then next thing you know, all the coaches' wives and people are grabbing and shaking us like, you guys made this happen. And we're going in the tunnel. I'm sharing the last of a buffet with Tony Dorsett, like giving Javon Curse high five. We're just all wasted. I come out of the waiting at the Porta John, and Eddie Robinson, the old Grambling coach, like just walks out. I'm like, Coach? He's like, that's a hell of a game, wasn't it, young man? And they had been in town playing TSU. I met Eddie Money that day. Like, it was just the craziest day of my life. So how, from that point on, how are you not like entrenched and just like, okay, this is my thing. Of course we want to win the Super Bowl. And that was the year. Like we were 1 yard away. Like that was a magical thing. And I hate that we were just 1 yard away, but still, how many teams come 1 yard away from winning the Super Bowl? Usually just get their ass blown out. So, hey, we were there.
How many people have a made up story that you have? That was obviously made up, right?
Hey, I could call some people right now and they'd be like, no, dude, it's crazier than that.
Dude, that is my
buddy Tom escorted Steve McNair's mom, like arm, like through, like in, like helped her walk across the field into the tunnel, dude. I'm telling you, it's crazy. Nuts. I've still got tickets from that and the Jacksonville playoff game. I've got like autographs from the players and stuff on the tickets. This little like crumpled cardboard, like almost like get out of jail free card that says like Titans visitor pass thing. I mean, this is a long time ago, like tickets weren't the word like they are today. I mean, everything was still all paper and it was crazy.
And that's how
that's my thing. That's why I'm obsessed with football, because of that.
And that's how Titans fans remember that season, that playoff run. It wasn't that they lost the Super Bowl. It's they almost won the Super Bowl. And they talk about it in that Steve McNair documentary. And even in the movie Castaway, where he comes back home and they give him all the updates. They're like, yeah, even Nashville got a football team. And they almost won the Super Bowl.
That's right. I mean, that's what I'm saying,
man.
Super
Bowls almost won.
Like that.
I mean, you get a few games where it's a last second field goal, but let's be real. Most Super Bowls are a blowout or at least a 2-score game. And we were right there, man. So, that's respectable to me, especially the first season. And that team was nasty, man. Oh, I even think the team after that was better, but that team was still nasty.
Yeah.
No,
that was crazy with Eddie George and, of course, R.I.P. Steve McNair and
rookie season of the Freak.
White Shack also.
Yeah, well, of course, that was the Music City Miracle. So I have two stories, and then I want to ask Miles because he's got some cool college stories. 2 stories here. One is like such a like mini version of what T.I. has for that playoff and knowing Jeff Fisher's secretary and like all that. Mine, it's simply not as good. So I'm throwing that out there, but it is interesting. It is kind of cool. So for a time after my divorce in 2010, me and a buddy of mine who was in a podcast with Miles, so Miles knows him, me and him moved to Carmel, Indiana, which is where if you are a player, coach, or GM for the Pacers or Colts, you live in Carmel. Because no one lives in Indy, you live in the rich suburb, right? So Juan had taken a job at Red Robin, and I had just gone through my divorce, and he's like, hey, you helped me out years ago. why don't you stay with me for a year, get back on your feet, get back rolling, and we'll see, whatever. So the two of us lived.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought he was going to be like, just come on down to Red Robin, and I'm going to get you a free cheeseburger and fries, buddy.
Get
And
you a
you can
sandwich.
feel all better.
I'll get you free refills on
So
fries.
just had to say that because I totally like that was a good
Which
little
I
twist
did
there.
get a
Good
free
twist.
meal anytime I wanted. When your roommate is like the GM, you do get free food. I will say that. So I had a side job because through a friend working at Tommy Bahama. Now we have a bunch of idiots that watch our show. I don't know if Sports Idiot Nation would ever get a sponsorship from Tommy Bahama. It's more you're a little bit more well-to-do. It's not our crowd, I'll say that. But you may know what Tommy Bahama is, right?
They
The
may
old guy
not
on the
think
beach.
they're not in our crowd yet, but
Right.
once we get that
So I
endorsement
worked
deal,
part-time at Tommy Bahama and in the fashion mall, the Rich Mall, right, by Indianapolis. And one day a pretty sharp-looking around 50-year-old woman comes in, and it's slow, so I just walk up to her and ask her how she's doing, if there's anything that I can help her with, because I know she's not shopping for herself. And so, because she's in the men's section looking at jeans. So we start talking, and somehow I bring up basketball, because in those days I was coaching basketball and just loved basketball, and just, I don't know how we started talking about it. And she goes, "Oh, you like basketball? Do you like the Pacers?" And I was like, well, to be honest, I'm more of a Golden State fan, but living here has been really cool because Danny Granger, Roy Hibbert, those boys got it rolling. George Hill, they've really got a good team this year. David West. So she was like, well, my boyfriend is Kevin Pritchard, the GM of the Pacers. And I was like, Kevin Pritchard, he went to Kansas with Danny Manning. I got autistic again. I was like, he played with Larry Bird. He went to Kansas. He won with Danny Manning. And she was a little taken it back, a little bit like, why do you know so much?
she started backing up slowly.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
was like, yeah,
I
cool,
gotta go.
Cool.
Wait,
I
there's
don't,
a sale. Miss.
Yeah, I don't know. Prank caller.
We start talking, and she's like, wow, you really know your stuff. And I'm like, yeah, no, wow, it's so nice to meet you. So she was a cheerleader for the Portland Trailblazers, dated Kevin Duckworth, who passed away, and told me all about the Trailblazers. She's from Oregon, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was so cool. She said, well, here's my email. I just moved here a couple months ago, and Kevin always sits with the owner who owned the shopping mall that I was in too, the Simon Malls. That's who owns the Pacers. And so I was like, or she said that she never sits in her seats. She always sits with Kevin, and Kevin always sits with the owner, and they sit way far. But her seats are like third row across from the bench. And she always has like 8 tickets. So she emailed me, and she said, well, when the Warriors come, I'll make sure you get tickets. Well, within a week, she emailed me and said, hey, I still can't find people to go to these games. It was just a random game. You're welcome to go. So I literally called my boss, who I was supposed to work at Tommy Bahama that night, and said, hey, I have a couple extra tickets. Not only am I calling off, but how about you come with me? He was like, done. So how many bosses just let you call off work because you're going to go with them? So we're in like the third or fourth row, me and my roommate and the guy, a couple buddies, and we're just having the time of our life. We're hearing the players call down the back screens, call out the plays, seeing them sweat. And again, this is when the Pacers were really, really good. And so that was so fun. Then comes playoff time. And this is where Game 7, Pacers Miami Heat. I went to 3 playoff games, and when I tell you that atmosphere was electric, it was freaking cool. It was the people in the suites upstairs. They do. I've been to other NBA games, and only Indiana have I seen this, where they have like the drum line up there, and so it's like college atmosphere, and they're just doing their thing. And you got again Roy Hibbert, George Hill, Lance Stevenson, David West.
Adam, you were close enough to see the air come out of Lance Stevenson's mouth onto LeBron, right?
Yeah. And dude,
Oh, that's great.
like
That's a meme. That's a meme. Look it up, y'all. Now it's a meme. It totally is a meme. It's great.
that was now it
Yeah,
wasn't like
I've heard. I mean, you've been to
it wasn't
NFL
Music City
playoff game.
Miracle.
Well, still though, you've been to NFL playoff game. I'm sure, right?
No.
You haven't? I figured you probably have a Niners game or something. Well, anyway,
No, because since I live in the Midwest now, I've never been to anything like.
well, you just came back from Monday Night Football, so I mean, why is that a stretch for me to think that? You know?
No, that's fair. That's fair. Way to make me look
I mean,
like a bad fan. I have another
flew an
story.
idiot.
You
As
just
soon
flew
as you're
back
done
to San
making fun
Francisco
of
for
me,
Monday Night Football. God forbid me think you went to a playoff game. How
Right.
crazy! It's silly of me.
as
No,
soon
I
as
was
you're
just
done
gonna
making
say.
fun of me, I have another story though. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have heard that there is no atmosphere like an NBA playoff game. And I have been to a handful of Titans playoff games. I think of 4, maybe 3. I think 3. I like to try to forget the Bengals one. Scary. But anyway, so I've just wondered that because I've tried to get down to a Grizzlies playoff game and past couple seasons that we haven't had that opportunity.
I was gonna say,
know,
not recently. Yeah.
but
NBA's coming up
really,
soon, man.
yeah, so I'm hoping that they get back to the playoffs, and I'm definitely going to try to go. But I have heard many people say that they've been to. I have some buddies who went to World Series games. I've heard it from everybody, but everybody says there's nothing like an NBA playoff game. So you experienced that, so it sounds like you had a great time.
It was so fun. I wasn't a fan of either team, but it didn't matter, man.
It's better. It's better.
It was really, really cool.
Dude,
Now I do
that's
have
like bliss.
Now here's my story. Miles knows this one. This is a story that now you can't make fun of me. This is pretty sweet. So I did live in 2006 to 2008. I did move back to the Bay Area and was living with family. And these were the days where Barry Bonds had about 750 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
And so he hadn't broken the record yet, but it was coming. And he played in San Diego on a Sunday and tied the record, and then came home and had a 3 or 4 game split with the Washington Nationals. And so here he is at 755 home runs. And here I am at 26 years old. And I'm like, I will not be able to look people in the face if I ever just don't try to freaking buy a ticket. I don't care if anyone else can go, whatever. So the only tickets that I could find were in a group of 4. So I grabbed my cousin Erin, who Miles knows, and her then boyfriend at the time, and then my buddy Eno, because everyone in California is Asian, obviously. So his name is Eno. So
Brian Eno? Brian Eno?
Right?
Just one name, just Eno.
So the first game on Monday, I was able to just grab one ticket. So on the Sunday, he ties the record. On Monday, I go. The closest he does is hit one to the warning track. It's now Tuesday, and I say, all right, Barry, you have one more game, because I can't keep spending
All right,
$550. I can't keep doing that. $500 for one regular season game in August does not really make sense, right? So I bought the first one, okay, and then the second one is where I only found a group of 4 tickets. So the 4 of us go, and in the 6th inning, as you know, he hits it high, he hits it deep, out of here, 756. I still get chills just talking about it. I remember stopping cheering. We all stopped because the stadium was shaking. And as you know, we are on a fault line there in the Bay Area. And so we're like, earthquake. Oh my God, what a terrible time for an earthquake. There's just a sense of panic. And we're like, wait a second. We're shaking the stadium. We, as 50,000 people, are shaking somehow the stadium. And when we realized it, we just even started cheering even louder. A girl 2 rows down, because the row in front of me, it was 2 and 2. So Aaron and Alan were in front of me, but the row before that, this girl just kissed me. It was just like a party. It was just it was unbelievable.
Did you get her number? Didn't get her number.
No,
In
those days it was flip phone, so I don't even have good like footage of it. That's how long ago it was.
Footage of the kiss?
2007.
Come on, man. That's weird. You don't want to footage the kiss. That's just kind of weird. She definitely wouldn't want your number after that.
Right.
Oh, the game. I get it. The game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the game. Well,
I mean,
what was it? Was it the Oakland World Series where they actually had an earthquake, right? Was that Oakland?
Yeah, 1989.
Yeah,
Al
that's
Michaels
pretty
was
wild.
live on TV, and
That
the feed
is
goes
wild
out.
to think about, right? Like the exit
is
at the
really
game,
wild,
like
man.
do, like oh shit, there's an earthquake.
Come on, man.
Yeah, Miles, what do you
You know?
remember of that? Oh, he wasn't alive.
We've already discussed this.
Yes.
Miles wasn't swimming yet, you know.
So
He wasn't swimming. He
exactly.
wasn't swimming yet. Speaking of swimming,
About
you know,
2 months
we all-
prior.
That's a great segue because that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Miles, you take it with swimming and some college football.
Yeah, so growing up, I swam year-round competitively, and I held my own for a while when I was 10, swimming in the state of Indiana, which is like one of the premier states. You think Texas football, a lot of people think Indiana basketball. Well, our swimming's up there with our basketball as well. When I was 10 years old, swimming club was part of our 400-meter relay, our 4x1. And I was the anchor. I was the last swimmer. And the kid next to me, who I knew I was going to be going up against, him and I for the state title. He was the number one ranked swimmer in the 100 free in the entire state. So I was like, well, if they come into me and we're only like a body length ahead, probably going to lose. Well, they come in. My third swimmer comes in, and they're essentially tied. They're neck and neck. So anyone who knew anything about the way that race was going knew we were about to get silver in that. So I get in, stay with them the whole way, do my flip turn, come back, and I mean, it is down to the wire. Get to the flags. I'm probably like an arm's length ahead, and then he just kicked it into gear. And at the very end, I mean, not a now. I get beat, man, and it was
You have a
heartbreaking.
pimple?
So I look up,
But I mean, what
and
people don't know
I
is that person that beat you was Michael Phelps. It was Michael Phelps that beat you.
sure. Let's go with that. Let's
There's-
go with
there's
that. He was
no
swimming
shame.
a little bit above the age range
Michael
right there for
Melps.
10 and unders, but we'll stick with that. Thanks there, Ti. So I look up at the board second. Whatever. Get out of the pool. We're walking off, and then we walk over to the side of the pool, and our coach is hooping and hollering and screaming. We're like, we were supposed to get second. We got second. Like, what's going on? He's like, state champs. Yeah, man. Like, congrats, y'all did it. And what the hell? Looking at the board. 2.
Nice.
He's like,
That's
no,
awesome.
you don't understand. What's going on? We look at, he points up to the board again. There's a DQ next to the team we were going against and a 1 next to us. And we're like, what the hell? So we look back, and the officials talking to 3 of the 4 swimmers out there, and the 4th kid's dumbass is in the pool. So we're like, what happened here? Well, it turned out after they touched me, one of the other
They did
swimmers
what
on
now?
the relay jumped in the pool.
No Diddy.
Yes, out touched me. So he jumped in the pool while the race was still going on. Everyone else was swimming, so they got disqualified, and I won my 1 state championship. So got second place, took home gold.
Dude,
So that's
that's
my
awesome.
one claim to fame. I didn't have to be the best, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
you
Boys
don't.
and
That's-
girls, sometimes.
Hey, team sports, man. I ran track in high school. Team sports are awesome, man. Like,
vote
so-
next month for
you know,
Yep, Ti.
Harris or Trump.
But no, we're voting Ti. That's all good. We're voting Ti.
We always vote T.I.
I proved Ricky Bobby wrong. If you're not first, you can still be first. So suck it, nerds. But
hell,
beyond that, growing up, I think really my coolest story overall isn't one single story, but just being able to play from 5th grade all the way through high school with a future first round draft pick is really the coolest thing there is. So repping his jersey tonight. This is not an Ocho Cinco jersey. This is a one Tyler Eifert, who is a far better pass catcher than Ocho Cinco. Just didn't know it because of injuries. Now, myself, I have 6 concussions, so I forget a lot of that time with him. If it wasn't for that and Tyler getting injured, we'd probably be both well on our way to Canton, Ohio right now. But we'll never know. We'll never know for sure.
You and Tua both.
Injuries,
you and Tua both.
yeah, the whole, yeah, Get a little crinkly. So, yeah,
Did
I'm
you
an
just do
idiot
the hand
because of
motion
that.
of Tua when he gets a?
You know,
He's like a baby
represent.
T-Rex.
Well, unless
Standing
Miles,
strong.
unless
Standing
Miles
strong.
just joined a gang, like, yeah, clearly that's what he was doing, you know.
Yes,
Or he might have
Brandon,
just
you
joined a
named it.
gang. Maybe he did just join a gang. He wouldn't tell us if he did because he can't. You know, you don't tell people. He's got to
No,
initiate
we
us
don't talk
first.
about Fight Club. We
He's
don't
got to
talk about
initiate us
Fight Club.
first. You know.
Yeah. So instead of actually playing sports beyond high school, got into filming, got into film editing, and met a number of people through that. So got to film for IU football. Yes, we're finally winning. It's a miracle. I haven't seen anything like this in my life. Certainly, while I was there, we were not winning. That was
As is
abysmal, but
tradition.
it
Just
was
at any
it
time
is our
before
tradition.
this year.
Losing is tradition. Oh,
Yeah.
COVID
I mean,
year
they've
and
gone
year
to a bowl
2019,
game.
we were good here and
Yeah,
there.
Sure.
We
here and
dabble. We dabble. But
Well,
I
during
mean,
my
all-
time there, we were abysmal. I think we won a combined like 18 games in the 4 years I was there. It sucked. But had some cool encounters of the first, second, third, and fourth kind. Um, One time, we were playing a home game in Bloomington, and up by the press boxes above is where we would film from the sideline. And walked up there, and there's this scraggly looking, thin as a rail dude who has his back to me. And I walk up there and I open the door, and as soon as I open the door, it turns around and it's John Cougar Mellencamp. And so that was pretty cool because he's a huge IU supporter. The practice
awesome.
facility for the
he
football
was
team
the
is
only
named
fan at the
after him.
game.
Yeah, so I should have known immediately that it was him. But he turns around, and I'm in there with my video equipment. He pulls out of his pocket his cigarette carton, pulls out a cigarette. He's like, "Man, you want to smoke?" And I stupidly said no to smoking. Ladies and gentlemen, I should have smoked that day. I at least should have took the cigarette from him and said, "Hey, can you sign it?" And then just pocketed a signed cigarette from John Mellencamp. One of the biggest mistakes of my life. But
Yeah,
I
Should
still
have
have my
asked
story
him
to tell.
to. Should have said, "Can you sing me a little ditty about Jack and Diane?" You know, that's what you should ask him.
Two American
sing-
kids still doing
I'll-
the best they can.
I'll have a smoke with you if you sing me a little ditty.
right.
You know.
Yeah.
Not about Diddy.
But
Other cool stories from that is just us getting beat down by all time greats. Like you had Russell Wilson his 1 year at Wisconsin, went
That's
up to
right.
be not that was Beaver Stadium, it was Penn State. I went there a couple times, but
Happy
Badgers
Valley.
play at Camp Randall. Up at Camp Randall, dude, most underrated stadium in the Big Ten. I do not like Wisconsin, but damn it, that stadium is cool. Jump around and then third quarter was awesome. Russell Wilson running all over us and throwing all over us wasn't fun. He caught a touchdown pass in the first quarter en route to about like 65 they dropped on us that day. But another all-time Wisconsin great that I got to meet, Barry Alvarez. So my Barry story, being in Barry Alvarez, what a cool dude. This is at the point he wasn't coaching anymore. He was the athletic director before he came back to coach the one Rose Bowl. They played
Right.
in against, I think, Stanford.
Which was pretty
But-
cool that he did that.
Yeah, and it just showed his love for the program because he didn't need to do that at all. But he did, and I believe they won that game. But in any case, man, like I was up in the press box. That was actually 1 year we played Wisconsin at home in Bloomington as well. And I'm a nobody. I'm a college student filming the game for IU and have my IU attire on. And he just starts talking to me like I'm, another coach or athletic director or assistant athletic director, and just asking me about me, like, hey, how long, what year are you? What are you studying? What do you enjoy? Like talking to me like he had known me for years. It was really cool. So a moment like that where I started to dislike Wisconsin a little bit less. Barry Alvarez, stand-up guy. Say what you want about some other coaches Wisconsin's had, notably their Illinois coach right now. He's paying in the Batushka and grade 8 a-hole. But Barry Alvarez, all-time dude. Another guy I got to meet from Purdue, Joe Tiller. I despise Purdue in every way, shape, and form, but it pisses me off that they have guys that are just so lovable. Drew Brees and Joe Tiller. Like, Joe Tiller is one of the greatest human beings you could ever meet in your life. He would come up to the IU coaching offices during the week between games and just chat it up with the coaches. Coach he didn't even coach against before, just all the intertwinings of coaching trees and this, that, and the other. He had connections to everyone. Purdue guy coming to IU practices, come in the coach's offices. He'd come into the intern office or the video office, just chat it up with all of us. So great ed guys from the Big Ten, especially from rival schools, which makes me mad, but awesome experiences, and really glad I had those opportunities to talk it up with Hall of Fame football coaches.
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be cool
That's
at
awesome.
Purdue. I snuck in as a student with a fake ID because I had friends that went to Purdue, and it was when Drew Brees was there, and when they played Michigan State, that's TJ Duckett, Carlos Rogers.
Yep.
I think it might have been Jeff Smoker was the quarterback. But it
Yep.
was Brees at quarterback and Junior Bryant, who played for the 49ers on defense. Just some guys that What?
Doesn't Drew Brees still hold the NCAA completion record for a game or something? I think like with
Wow, does he?
Oh, I don't know. I'm saying does he? I thought at one point I thought he still did. It was like something like almost 70 completions or something in a game, and it was an insane game. I remember watching it. I remember I was bartending at this bowling alley, and there was no customers, and I was just kind of watching this game, and I was like, "Who is this guy? He is just
From Texas,
They're-
playing at
they're-
Purdue.
They're not
Yeah.
running any plays. They're not running the ball at all. They're just passing it the whole game." And he complete.
Well,
I mean, he had like 75 something attempts or something that game. It was insane.
So I wonder if it was the game that I was at, because what I'll tell you is that score was like 45-38. And because I'm the student sitting in the student section, I was the push-up guy. So for every point, they were pushing me up in the air. And so they scored 45 points.
They
So
were
I
pushing
picked
you up in the air. Holy cow!
Yeah.
They had to
So,
work.
like,
They had to
here
work.
I am, the student, I have like a student ID, and I'm with 13 of my friends who go to Purdue. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a Purdue student. And they're like, all right, you're going to be the push-up guy. All right, the first touchdown. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, well, then you have to do it every time. And again, Drew Brees probably threw the ball 70 times that game. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it was
Might
like
been.
45-38. Carlos Rogers had a great game. I remember guys like TJ Duckett and all that for Michigan State. I mean, that was such a fun game. That was my first college football game. That was wild.
Was that not Charles Rogers?
Or I said Carlos Rogers, didn't I?
Yeah.
Charles Rogers,
Charles
who got
Rogers.
drafted by the
Rogers.
Lions. Remember when the
that's
Lions
your
drafted
inner
that
Auburn fan.
receiver?
That's your inner Auburn fan coming out.
Charles Rogers.
That's
Yeah.
Adam, the inner Auburn fan just came out.
Oh,
It's
we'll
okay.
put it back.
I will say,
Let's put 'em back.
Miles had some cool, stories about some folks he met. I've got just one story that can't go without telling. It's real quick, but obviously growing, when I was young, I kind of, like I said, adopted the Packers. Buddy of mine worked at the golf course of Tennessee. I think it's out in Kingston Springs, and he's like, "Hey, we're having the Vinny tournament." It's what's the country singer?
Vince Gill.
Vince Gill, yeah.
Yeah, Vince Gill. Yeah.
He's touring
Yeah,
with
he
the
has-
Eagles now.
He's a good musician. He's a good dude, and he's a nice guy too.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of
I've
good
heard that.
things about him. But he has a golf tournament every year called the Vinny. I don't know if he still does it, but back then it was a big deal. And Buddy was like, "Hey man, Brett Favre's going to be at this Vinny, and he's like, you need to I can get you. You can come work it. Just you can just act like you're working or whatever, and just come there." And so, like, I had to, like, go in. I had this kind of pass and stuff, and I had to kind of pretend like I was just one of the people working. And I had a little golf club shirt and everything. And so I kept following him to every hole. It was like almost like a Happy Gilmore type thing, And I couldn't ever get to him. I could not ever get to him because he was just swarmed. And he got to the last hole, and I was just like, it's now or never. And I mean, I legit, like, pushed these kids out of the way. Like, I just was like, whoo, and just went right up to the front. I was like, Brett. Gave him a high five, and I had the Vinny program. I was like, "Can you sign this?" He just signed Brett Favre and gave it back to me. And I still have it. It's faded, but it's kind of funny, But like, I legit was like, "All right, this is the 18th hole. I have no more chances. I'm just pushing all of these kids out of the way, and I'm getting this done." And I got it done, because at that time, man, he's still to the day my all-time favorite quarterback to watch. I know he's not too popular in the public speaking circuit these days, but
Fair.
he was pretty damn good in the football field. Never missed a start. Watch the dude one time complete 7 out of 10 passes with 3 of his fingers taped together, throwing the football with 2 fingers. Like, there's nobody like him, dude. So he's still to this day my all-time favorite player to watch. But like, that was, to me, was like my moment where I was like, look, I can either just like swallow my pride and move on, and I didn't get a chance to meet him, where I could push all these little 8 to 10-year-olds out of the way. I'm bigger than them, and I can give him a high five and get an autograph. And hell yeah, I did. You know,
Yep. Love it. My grandfather in San Francisco, Benihana, is a very famous, those restaurants where they chop, 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 and right in front of you on the grill and like make jokes and all that.
Hibachi.
Hibachi, yeah, flip that and whatever.
flip it in the hat. Woo!
Yeah, exactly. Like
Now,
they do
don't
it
you want to eat it
times,
since
but,
it's been in my hat? Not
right?
really.
And you have to pretend.
Nah.
No
Yeah.
one goes when it's their first time ever. Like everyone at least has been there before it, and you're like, you have to pretend like, oh, that trick again. Yep, it's still great. Like, well,
Ooh.
at Benihana, my grandfather was there, and the entire 49er offense was there in the heyday. This is early 90s, so I'm already
cool.
by then living in Indiana, and he goes up to them and says, "Look, my grandson will disown me if I don't at least try. Jerry, is there any way you can just write your autograph? Here's a napkin." And so on the back is a grease stain. I think it's Jerry's grease, guys. And on
Could be
the
a drink
front,
stain. Could just
it
be a drink
says
stain.
to Adam from Jerry Rice, SF 49er. And what's super cool is it definitely checks out, like, because truth
Because
be
he
told,
put 49er on it is why.
Well, that's
right?
the
You
reason,
were like totally him.
no, like when you see the like different autographs from Jerry Rice on different
For
things
sure.
that you look up, like
Oh
it
yeah.
looks exactly like it, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Because I will admit, on my dad's side, my grandfather told some tales in his day, and so when I was in 5th grade and he sent me that, I didn't know about those tall tales, but as an adult, knowing that, the thing that gives me confidence is like, how could he learn the exact signature? Like I feel like that's pretty legit. So
Yeah.
that's
It's awesome.
that's pretty cool. So I have that framed along with
Well,
my
with the grease stain, just test the DNA, baby. Just test the
exactly
DNA.
when I meet Jerry, which I almost met Jerry just a few weeks ago. As you mentioned, I was in the Bay Area for that Monday Night Football game. Jerry was there, and because I was so close, I saw him, Steve Young.
Theater pricked him.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to like actually like, hey, I brought some DNA. That's a Seinfeld episode where
Just
George,
need a little blood. Can I
Yeah,
just draw
George-
like an ounce of blood?
George thinks he's driving John Voight's car, and Kramer has a pen or a pencil, and he happens to run into him, and he bites him on the finger. So there's an old pencil in the car, and they try and like get the bite marks
Match the
from
bite
Kramer.
marks. Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the best episodes ever. Seinfeld, good lord.
Yeah. Seinfeld.
yeah.
We need to do a whole episode on Seinfeld.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
probably needs to happen for sure. We'll just talk about shows that have left a huge mark on us, a bite mark. So, okay, what else? Any other?
Well, you guys, coach, you guys have some pretty cool basketball stories. I know because I've seen you guys going back and forth on the thread and stuff. But you guys,
Oh, right. So
coach,
we can get
coach
into
some. You guys have had some basketball stories.
So I'll
My
get into
basketball stories are very boring, so I'll let you guys lead that off.
And this is kind of cool because now all of you sinners get to know how Miles and I met. So I was in a softball league with a mutual friend, Zach, and Zach was already friends with Miles, and we needed a sub or something happened where Zach brought Miles to whatever it is that we were doing. And if I remember right,
Playing
the very
Dungeons and
first
Dragons.
time, yeah,
Oh,
the very
sorry.
first time we met was at a restaurant where it was opening day for the NBA. If you remember
Right.
that, Miles.
It's
And
cool
it
LeBron's
was
first game back to Cleveland.
Yep, and I remember Carmelo Anthony, I think, was with the Knicks. It was like a TNT doubleheader or something.
Yeah.
But I remember catching one of those games with you, and then we were kind of just joined at the hip as buddies like since then. But we then played softball together, and then one day we're just talking, and I'm like, hey, have you ever coached basketball, or are you into basketball that much? Because I knew more about his football stuff, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know enough about basketball for sure,
I'm
especially
from Indiana. I'm
for yeah,
from
yeah,
Indiana. I
and
know
especially with
basketball.
kids, I can do
Yeah.
it." And so we coached an AAU team together, and then when he actually moved on, he was in the military and moved to your backyard, basically. Ti. What happened was I stayed in Indiana and coached more teams along with at the high school that we coached, which, by the way, Miles and I did coach 1 year together, and we coached Malik Williams,
Two.
who
It was 2 years, sir. Two
was it his
seasons.
junior
It
and
was two.
senior year?
Correct. Yeah, because two head coaches. We had two head
Yes. Okay.
coaches. Yep.
So Malik Williams, who just finished up with the Toronto Raptors and got signed by the Miami Heat, we coached him for half of his high school career. And so that's pretty cool. And
That's
who had
awesome.
just graduated not long ago from that very high school was Jesse Bates. And he, a few weeks back on Monday Night Football had the game-winning interception, the game-clinching interception, I guess I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known him since he was a freshman in high school. Just a great dude. But back to Miles and I, once he moved to Tennessee, I ended up coaching another AAU team that had now he was a first round pick for the Pistons. He's going into his third year, I believe, now. Third or fourth, Miles? I can't
Third, I
remember.
believe.
Third. Jaden
Yeah.
Ivey. So his mother is the head coach at Notre Dame women's basketball. She was a great player in her day.
They're probably better than the football team right now.
Yeah. So I got to coach Jaden Ivey for half of an AAU season, basically. And what was super cool is I had never been in an atmosphere like that before, where these guys, you understand that half of these guys are going to the NBA. Like, it's just in that circuit, right? The AAU circuit. There's some circuits that are like, okay, this is like the nothing league. And then there's the Peach Jam, the Nike stuff, this is a big deal. And so I remember in Michigan, we were at this tournament where it was just all these big names. And the coach at the time for IU was Crean at the time. And then Painter, or no, it wasn't Crean. It was Archie. It was Archie Miller.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
So
right.
It was Archie Miller and Matt Painter.
tried
And they
to
were
forget.
sitting next to each other at the game so I'm coaching a game, and it's being watched by the head coaches of IU basketball and Purdue basketball. Purdue basketball in the last couple years has been pretty dominant. So it was just really cool to shake hands with those guys, talk to them a little bit, and then later coach Michael Ealy, who was a Purdue prospect for a little bit. He's bounced around a little bit in college, but a supreme athlete, great kid, know his family, run into his family at B-dubs all the time. And again, talk to Coach Painter again when I run into him in the summer, doing summer league stuff. And this has been a few years ago, but it's just cool to rub elbows with these types of guys, like Miles mentioned, to rub elbows with a Joe Tiller. It's just fun. And when they treat you the way that they do, it's pretty cool to have real conversations, So that's been really, really fun. It's been years ago. I don't even think of myself as a coach anymore. And then I run into ex-players who are getting married or having kids or things like that. And I run into them at Target or whatever. And they're like, "Hey, what's up, coach?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." In the group chat, I shared a picture of John and Jigga, those guys, Miles.
Yep, absolutely.
We coached those guys
playing
in 6th, 7th
ball,
grade.
football.
And now they're playing college football. They're great
Yep.
pillars of the community. And
Right.
they're pillars because of us, basically.
That's
because
right.
we
They're
did
welcome.
so
That's right.
much for them.
Accept that moral
And
victory.
you're welcome, society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
That they're
Well,
not idiots.
Well, my basketball stories are not as exciting, as monumental and important. I didn't shape anyone's lives, but I loved basketball. Like I said, growing up in the 90s, watching the Bulls, I was just obsessed. I just wasn't very good at it. That was my problem. I had a great affection for it, and I wanted to be great. And I just the sport was like, no, you're too white, can't jump. So I would try out for high school team every year, just never make it. And I thought my senior year, like, I got this. Like, please, my senior year, like, just give me a break. I don't have to play. Just keep me on the bench. And no, I still didn't make it because I sucked, So I played church basketball, and I was pretty good at church basketball. Pretty good. So yeah, there's two things I was good at is not making the high school team and making the church team that you didn't have to try out for. I was very good at that. But one game, it was end of the game. I had no idea it was the end of the game. I just found myself out on the wing with the ball, and I was open, and I just not paying attention to anything in life, obviously. I just threw it up, and I was like, hey, I got an easy shot and hit it. And apparently it was an important game. Apparently, we went on to play another game because of that, and it was at the very end, and it's the only time in my life I had a game-winning shot. And if I had just waited a half second longer, people would have been very mad at me. But I didn't wait a second longer. I just threw it up, and it went in, and the rest is history, So it's a failure at high school basketball, but I was a legend at church basketball at that moment, at one time.
Yeah, I was not good enough for regular high school basketball, so I too had to play church league. And the middle school that I went to is connected to the church. So all those kids that I grew up with played for that school /church/team, right, for the church league. But I, as a free agent, played for this random team with a couple buddies. One of those buddies was also on the podcast with Juan and Miles, Paul, who married my cousin Aaron, who was at the game that Barry Bonds hit the home run. You talk about full circle. There it is right there, ladies and gentlemen. You will only find that on Sports Idiot Nation. So be sure to like and subscribe right there. Now, what I'll say is it's always fun when you play against the kids that you grew up with, who especially those kids were a little bit more on the snobby end. And so here I am playing against all those kids that I grew up kind of with. And I was a decent player, just barely not enough for high school. I didn't play AAU. My parents didn't know what that was. So here I am. I have about 18 in the game at this point. It's in the second half, and the ball goes out of bounds right next to Kim Gerbers. Who's Kim Gerbers? The coolest girl in school. She went to the grade school that I'm talking about. She is there to root on her friends. So she doesn't care about what I'm doing.
Coolest girl in school.
But the ball goes out right by her. So I go take the ball out. The ref hands the ball right there. I look and say, oh, what's up, Kim? I get the ball back and hit a half-court shot like Steph Curry, like nothing. Like just for fun because I know she's watching. And I look back at her and give her a wink. One of the top 5 moments in my life. It was nothing but net.
Calm down,
It was one of those. It was
Disney
one of those moments. Seriously,
High School Musical thing going on here. After school special. I believe it. I'll believe it. Why not?
She doesn't.
I made any
there's
money.
no way.
That's cool.
I'm gonna tag her in this. I'll send it to her. There's no way that she remembers it. But guys,
I can guarantee
I
you
remember it.
she probably forgot it that night. But
I'm sure
you didn't know
the peppercorn moment.
Hey man,
yeah.
No, hey,
she was the coolest. She still is the coolest human being. Kim, shout out to you. Everything that you've accomplished as a 43-year-old. Good job. So again, be sure to like and subscribe. Sports Idiot Nation. We
Ninja
are
Turtles.
picking up just our one-time thing to say. Yeah,
couldn't let it pass. Couldn't let it pass.
His autism.
Shout out to the Toy Pit.
Yeah, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles find a way into our show almost every show. So
they almost didn't this one.
Yeah, we just force it in there. So again, every Monday and Thursday, Sports Idiot Nation, the best way to watch is on YouTube. We, of course, are on Spotify and Apple as well. So check us out. Tell your friends, and we will see you Monday. Okay, all you sinners, follow Sports Idiot Nation on TikTok, X, and Instagram. Like us on Facebook, and remember, the most fun way to watch us is on YouTube every Monday and Thursday. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you can be updated when new content drops. Remember, the podcast can also be found on the usual suspects of Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Always remember, don't be an idiot.
Sinner.